different from ordinary people. I drink from the great mother's breasts.
It may be factual. I don't know the complete history. I know a little bit of the history of the Russian people, that they're a great civilization, and that he feels, I think from the 1990s up until this present border with him from the NATO alliance, there's a consternation to his mindset about being disrespected. Like, we had the Monroe Doctrine here that we projected for a long time, and maybe we still are with these drugs off the coast of Venezuela. But that's a component in this man's mind. And I think when you start dealing with someone like that, if you want to follow the path that Anson had laid out, fine. But I think if you lay out that path, you should be cognizant about how your potential enemy views the conflict. And when you start talking about honor and you start talking about civilization, integrity of the civilization, you're getting into a lot deeper emotional and strategic resolve on how far you might go. That, if you're 10,000 miles away from your homeland, you're battling over some kind of regional control of something, you may not have the same mindset you would have if you view it as something that's endemic to your civilization and how you're being viewed and how the world views you. And so there's that component. And I think that component is dangerous in the mindset that if Vladimir Putin holds that, and Trump, by his nature, the way that he negotiates, it could be two personalities and two mindsets that could escalate a ladder fairly quickly based on the personalities and how they think. So there's that component too. But I agree with Anson. If you're going to do this, given the limited range and the strategic value of the asset you're deploying, if you hit an apartment, it's not going to do as much as hitting a refinery or hitting a supply depot strategically to the outcome of the order. So I think if Zelensky gets these, I think he should selectively use them onto the military assets that could impede the Russian movement into his country. I think that'd be a lot more effective use. I'm kind of on the fence with this because I don't trust his mindset on how he views what is occurring. I think he's almost in an honor mode, a civilization honor mode. And if you want to challenge that, that's fine, but you probably want to be very cognizant of how quickly that mindset could ramp up into the escalatory action. So that's my take on it, Gary. I mean, I may be completely wrong, but I think those personality components with these two men is very critical on how you
Steve, something about fighting thousands of miles away from home and not having skin in the fight, perhaps. Are you suggesting that if we deployed or give, I guess deploy is the right word, Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, that there would be Americans involved in the battle other than being advisors and teaching people how to use the Tomahawks?
What I was driving at, Gary, no, completely different than that. What I was driving at, if you are a nation and you're battling enemy force, say us in Afghanistan, and that was something that we was in there trying to accomplish certain objectives, but when push comes to shove, we just pulled out. On the other hand, I think we'd view an action, say, on our southern border if we was engaged with a lot more attention, a lot more ferocity, and a lot more trying to protect the homeland at all times. And what I'm saying is, I think that could play in to how Putin thinks about, combined with this nationalistic civilization view that he has of Russia. So that's what I was driving at, not what you articulated. And that mindset, I believe, given those circumstances, has the potential. It may not, but I think it adds to the potential of escalation in this conflict. That's all I was trying to get at.
Got it. Thank you, Steve. And now we'll go to Dominic.
There I am. Hey, Gary. I'm kind of leaning towards Anson on this. I think the fear mongering on issues of escalation are getting a little long in the tooth. I remember the very same arguments being made 2014 when Russia invaded Crimea under President Obama. And the leading from behind rationale was, we don't want to put any American lives or assets at risk. Okay, so 2014 went, we had the World Cup in Russia. I think it was in 2000, a couple of years after that. And then again in 2020, with the full-on invasion into Ukraine, the chirping was, under no circumstances can we escalate. Under no circumstances can we escalate. It simply is not worth the bother. And we said, okay. Then, we backtracked on that and started. I remember a huge argument over the F-16s. No, was it F-16s or was it the MiG-23? It was one of those jet airplanes in which the huge argument had to do with how can we get control of the skies, or how could Ukraine get control of its skies if it only had the F-16s, and we fucked around with them for so long. It was unbelievable on that issue. And of course, it folded into the ether, and Ukraine never got control of its skies. So the zeitgeist is, we're chicken. It's just the United States will not put anything at risk. It's just not politically correct. We don't have a belief system. We don't have
that mindset of
courage. We just simply do not have the balls.
Has the potential. It may not, but I think it adds to the potential of escalation in this conflict. That's all I was trying to get at.
Zeitgeist that exists in
Thank
America.
you, Steve. And now we'll go to
Nothing is worth
Dominic.
dying for. Nothing. Except maybe killing the president or Charlie Kirk. I don't know. Maybe. And so, with that in mind, where we are always subject to the chicken who's going to chirp about what the risks are. And that's going to cause us to do nothing. It's a problem for me. And I don't know what to do about it. Having a chicken, a yellow streak, it's so difficult for me to swallow. I take what Steve says into consideration, but I got to tell you, I got to fall a coward, and I don't know what to do about it. Someone might say, well, you got to be rational. There are legitimate risks that a responsible government leader has to Okay, I surrender. We'll do nothing, and we'll just try. And I think it certainly uh, 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 it inures to the benefit of China for this war to continue for as long as possible. So, hearing what Tiger had to say was no surprise at all. And so I don't know. It's difficult for me to be an American and have so much cowardliness. Uh, it's hard for me to deal with. I don't know what to do with it, Gary. Anyway, that's it.
So, given that the comments that you made about the historical background of U.S. Fear of getting too involved, and probably because of the Vietnam War, that's probably where it all started. That turned out to be quite the disaster. And we've had other disasters since then when we've gotten involved in things. As Hanson points out, the last time we actually won a war was World War II, I believe. But we're talking about a Donald Trump administration. Do you think that all those factors that you just delineated really necessarily apply to Donald Trump and his way of thinking?
I do. It doesn't make me happy to say that, Gary, but I do believe that the national zeitgeist is chicken shit, and he cannot do anything about that. It's simply been baked into the personality of America to be bullied. And because we will not put anything at risk, because the chirpers will chirp if you put anything at risk. No one should die. No one should die for anything. And I don't get that. We should all be willing to die for something. Why aren't we willing to die for freedom?
Dominic, don't you think though that maybe that was more true, or I think maybe there was more willingness to sacrifice in the World War II generation, but post-Vietnam, post-Iraq, post-Afghanistan, maybe that's changed. Because I don't think that's always been, I don't necessarily think it's baked into the American character, but I think that the last, especially after the last, post-Vietnam, but especially the last two debacles, I think people are war weary, and that is something Trump's got his finger on the pulse of. It's one of the reasons I think he got elected in 2016. Hillary was a hawk, and Trump was a guy that you knew that guy was not. He was not.
But I think it adds to the potential of the escalation in this conflict.
I take your point. It's a post-Vietnam baby boom and post-baby boom zeitgeist, and it's possible that it, from a sort of a psychological analysis, Scott, that there is an explanation for the chicken-livered American outlook now, and that we're going to have to live with that. But I'm just saying I'm not happy with it, Scott. That's all.
Well, you talk about people squawking, and of course people are going to squawk, but we have a president that seems to be relatively autocratic, and he decides, and the norms of checking with Congress, for example, before taking major actions, he has no time to deal with Congress. He's going to move full speed ahead. Many people are very off-put by that, as we know. It's discussed often on this stage. There are other people who say it's about damn time. That's also occasionally articulated on this stage. But the reason I bring it up is whatever is built into the personality of the country post Vietnam War, And I'm not going to argue your point. I don't think that Donald Trump necessarily cares about any of that. If Donald Trump decides that we're going to accelerate our support for Ukraine, and that does not necessarily mean boots on the ground. People have attacked me for saying this, but I thought it was brilliant of the president to come up with this deal where we sell the armaments to Europe, they purchase it, so the money comes into our economy, and then they provide the weaponry to Ukraine. I think that's brilliant. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to go into an Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam protracted battle with coffins coming back to the United States, flag draped and all of that. I think that he has a bit of a license to do whatever he damn well pleases. Whether it's given to him or whether he's taken it, it doesn't really matter. We know how he operates. So it would seem to me, again, not arguing your point, that this president doesn't give a damn about your point, basically.
I'll only take exception to the tense of your argument. I'm pointing out, as it relates to President Trump, past behavior, as it relates specifically to Ukraine, and your speculative notions about what he might do. He certainly has established his capacity to do something different.
He planted his flag, right? He planted his flag.
Right. But he has not done it. So my point is, just relying on facts and not speculation, that so far, my point stands. And your point about what can happen in the future, okay, it's speculative, but I'll accept it.
Well, your point is speculative. Your point is speculative as well. Everything that we're saying here today is speculative, Dominic, because we have no idea, right?
Excuse me, Gary. I meant to laugh. I meant to chuckle. Gary, and I got caught in a cough. Sorry.
Okay, no problem, buddy. Okay, thank you, Dominic, and we'll now go to...
Can I ask Dominic, I know I'm breaking protocol, but could I ask him one question before he leaves? Oh, never mind.
Yeah, okay. Before we get to the next caller, we're at the 6 o'clock hour, so we will not be adding folks to the stage, but we will go into extra time so everybody on the stage has an opportunity to speak. I just want to take a little break here and ask Scott to do some self-promotion, because Scott just completed, this guy is the podcast maven. I don't think anybody turns out as many podcasts as Scott does. He's like a machine. But you just posted one that's extremely interesting, and I want to give you an opportunity to tell folks about it and how they
can find it. Great.
And also recommend that you post the link to the chat.
Yeah, I'll post the link to the chat, and it's a really great episode. I had Jeffrey Rosen, the head of the Constitution Center in Philadelphia, the president and CEO of the Constitution Center, which is the only organization with a charter to promote and educate about the Constitution. He's an amazing guy, just a remarkable guy. And he's just written a book called The Pursuit of Liberty, and it's all about the conflict between Hamilton and Jefferson and how that conflict has shaped the American conception of liberty throughout American history. So he starts doing historical work on Hamilton and Jefferson, but then goes through from the post-Hamiltonian, Jeffersonian presidents and politicians all the way to President Trump. And it's just an amazing book. And he's an amazing guy. We had quite a remarkable conversation. He actually invited me to the book party next week, so I'm going to go. And what a lovely guy. Very, for those of you who are fans of American politics, American history. And by the way, one thing I found out that I didn't know is there's a distinct possibility that Alexander Hamilton was Jewish. And I did not know that. So lots of great information in this podcast. Great conversation with Jeffrey Rosen. And thanks, Gary, for letting me shamelessly do a little self-promote.
Hey, Scott, congratulations. I guess that explains why Hamilton never could get elected.
Well, you know what? He was very sheepish about Christianity, and he did take communion at his deathbed, but his mother, we think his mother there's a possibility of Judaism with the mother, and he was in a Jewish school, it appears, when he was in the Caribbean, and so very interesting connections.
I'll point out that Stevie Davis Jr. also played both sides of the ecumenical aisle at his death as well. he wanted to get all bases covered, so maybe Hamilton did as well.
Well, I do on any side of an ecumenical aisle I can if a woman is attractive, Gary. You know me.
Yes, sir. David.
Yes, great room again, Gary. Great points all the way around. I think the United States is at a possibly facing, an existential crisis with regard to its leadership in the world with regard to Ukraine and our inability to fully back Ukraine in a way that doesn't draw us into a more protracted war, which I believe that still the comments in the room today speak to the United States' appetite to survive another massive conflict where blood and treasure are involved. And I think those watching closely in China, Xi Jinping and his military apparatus are probably, using this example of what we're going to do as obviously the calculus in their attack on Taiwan. I flew through Taiwan not too long ago, and I was in the downtown area and walking around and watching the youth enjoy their nights out and the dinners and everything. I asked myself, is this community of Chinese nationals under Taiwanese freedom able to withstand the mighty Xi Jinping armies? And I looked around. I was talking to my buddy, and I said, man, I don't know. This place does not look like it's in any way ready or capable, or citizens ready to fight. They're enjoying too much of the West and what we provide. But I don't know, Gary. These are all speculations in the room. But we got to do something. Anson's right. We got to do something. I think Zelensky, he's already targeting the capitals. He's already targeting, I believe, St. Petersburg with drones. They're not as successful. And he is on the record as saying that with the help of the West and Tomahawks, that all bets are off the table. If they attack us, we're going to attack them. They better know where their bomb shelters are. I think this ultimately could really rattle the Russian population. And I don't think Putin wants any more destabilization with regard to the optics of how he's going to war or not. So there's that. I think that that with these long-range capabilities come the ability for them to take out the very missiles that are raining down on their cities and their hospitals and their communities. So, while Putin may be upset, I don't know how he can leverage any more than he already has. He's already threatened our NATO allies and the borders of those countries that butt up against his. But he makes no bones about it, Gary, that this is all a payback for what he saw as the disrespect of the former Soviet Union post-1991 and the picking off of the various satellite countries that were part of the Warsaw Pact. And so in his mind, this is all payback. So we either stand up and say enough is enough, and however you want to view the optics of us helping Ukraine further with this, that's not our problem, even though it is our problem. So I also read that the United States is prepared through a defense company to provide a certain form of military delivery capability of the Tomahawk. That I believe that the Tomahawk can only be deployed through a naval asset or an air asset, which I don't think Ukraine controls. But this new device, I believe it's more mobile on land, and would give I heard it was showcased at a military conference. And so I think we are getting ready to sell or to at least provide this on some level. And hopefully it brings Putin to the bargaining table. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, whatever he thought we were going to do on Ukraine's behalf was the stuff of, I mean, he was laughable when Putin met with Trump at the summit in Alaska. So I think it's time that we really either show our power or we don't. And I think ultimately this is
yoga and politics in Canada, John.
Well. And I believe Europe is also standing by, ready to respond. So let's see it happen. Let's see if either Putin comes to the table with some sort of concession that's going to work, or Ukraine gets the missiles. And I'll end there.
To your point about Europe and NATO, the article from which I quoted at the very beginning during my opening salvo in the Express, in the headline and deeper into the article they get into this, talks about how Europe is preparing for World War III. I'm not saying this to be alarmist. I'm just saying that when we've been analyzing this, we've kind of done it a little bit in a vacuum, talking about the United States and Tomahawk missiles, which of course is the topic of the room. But perhaps, as David just suggested, it's a completely different scenario, not necessarily a winning strategy, but a different scenario if we're talking about multiple fronts. Not just weaponry provided by the United States and technology provided by the United States and advisors teaching them how to use the weapons, but also whatever Europe has up its sleeve. So I'm certain as well that this is not happening in a vacuum, and the Kremlin is taking note of that as well, and they're factoring all that in to determine what their next move is. I don't know if he's prepared to fight a war on multiple fronts. And the threat that might occur, the Tomahawk missiles may have a greater impact as one component of something that potentially could be much more serious. It may not be Tomahawk weapons used to change the balance of the conflict. It may be multiple military strategies that affect the outcome of the conflict. So that's really an important thing for us to watch, which I don't think we watch very often or very well in the United States. Thank you, David, for bringing that up. And we'll now go to William.
Hey, good afternoon. I think we should, in the national interest of the United States, and to salvage what leadership we have in the world as one of the leaders of the free world, we should give Ukraine what they need to win this war and push the Russians back to their own borders. And what we've shown since 1991, when the Soviet Union fell, there's a lot of diplomacy and negotiation with Russia, but what we've shown is a lot of weakness. And this war will drag on for a long time with more death and bad outcomes if we don't give Ukraine what it needs to win. And it is not just us. When there was equivocation about our leadership in NATO, the Europeans went ahead and formed their own additional alliances additional to NATO, and they are prepared to fight the Russians. They're not 100% prepared, and they still need the United States. That is an important component of any plan to defend Europe and help Ukraine win against the Russian invasion. But the other powers are moving ahead with us and without us. And if you just look at the stock market, look at the European defense stocks. They have jumped in 2025 substantially, like a couple of fold. Rheinmetall and BAE and EA is partially American, but the Saab various top stocks, they are on the move, putting substantial real money and capitalization into building a war machine to fight Russia, and it's no joke. And Anson put it beautifully that Ukraine needs to be furnished tomahawks, yes, and I would go further. They need to be furnished the assistance that we can to help them win and just push the Russians back to their own country, because it's in the national security interests of the United States. And one of the things that Trump is accomplishing and remember, Trump is flip-flopped. He's switched sides on this. At one point, it looked like Witkoff was going over to the Kremlin and spouting Russian talking points to the damage of Ukraine. And when that didn't work out, then Trump went the other way. So, one of the things he's accomplishing to the benefit of the United States is keeping the American military-industrial complex more in the game, so that our military manufacturers can flourish doing what needs to be done. And our military stocks are doing fine as well, which is one fairly objective measure of what's going on. Not the only one, but I don't have insider information. I can just, read what is publicly facing. So yeah, I think we need to have Ukraine win and push the Russians back to their 2014 borders. Thanks.
And thank you, Tim.
Yes. The obvious answer is yes. And I'm gonna begin with a quote. It says, "When will the Americans understand that their constant fear of escalation, their addiction to the status quo, no matter how bad it is, have become the foundation of our enemy's strategy?" I really think that sums up what has been going on lately. I think that the entire war in Ukraine was due to Western weakness. Putin, he made a calculation based on previous incidents, whether it's Alexander Litvinenko died due to polonium in London, or it's Skripal in the UK, several others who have died in Europe on the hands of the Americans. The Russians under Putin. And this is a real thing. This is part of, and also the red line in Syria, which Obama never responded to the way he should have. So he saw weakness in the West. He thought that the response would not be stronger than what was seen in 2014, when there was a bunch of strong words and fear of sanctions, weak sanctions and everything. So he made a calculation, and he thought that he was going to get away with it, that he was going to be able to just run over Ukraine, turn it into either Belarus or took over it basically, and put his own I don't remember his name, but he used to be the president up until 2014, I think it was. So I think that one thing that I'm a little bit surprised I haven't heard about is the fear of nuclear escalation, because since 2022, 24th of February 2022, there have been 92 nuclear threats on behalf of the Russian government since. So just if anyone thinks that the fear of nuclear escalation is real, they need to explain why the latest threat is more credible than the previous 91, because they are throwing this out there, and they use sort of the throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks kind of tactic in the Russian media and the people they pay. They
just telling you, I appreciate that.
look for what works in the West. Everything is to scare everyone from taking action against Russian aggression. And one of the most successful ones seems to be nuclear threats, based on the number of nuclear threats that have been expressed since 24th of February 2022. So, and I just think that the first one started basically when there was tanks, or if you send the Abrams tanks to Russia, Ukraine, there will be nuclear war, and etc. For everything, there's always a nuclear threat for every single thing that the West will send. So I don't take this very seriously. And if it would be serious, then anyone they need to express why we would take this threat more seriously than previously. Anyways, I'm really interested in what Anson would say about this, but I think that what the Tomahawks can do is they can attack Russian pilots. It takes many years to get their pilots to train their pilots. So killing their pilots is a good idea. Going after ammunition depots is a good idea. And destroying the planes, because Tomahawks can also come with cluster ammunition. So you could destroy several of their planes that they use to bomb Ukraine. At the very least, they could force the Russians to put their planes that they use to bomb Ukraine outside of Tomahawk range, which makes it even more difficult for them to continue this war. And it would also make it easier for the drones that Ukraine already use to destroy their oil and gas infrastructure that they use to, it's good for the Russian economy, basically. So I think that it's a very good idea, and I'm very happy, very surprised that Trump would do this. I think the reason why is basically because it fits into his narcissism. He wants to go down as another president that have gotten the Nobel Peace Prize, and it's through his narcissism that makes
have a doctorate in that. And so, like, with that being said, like, a person can, like, have a doctorate in something, but can be the expertise in everything, right? Like, for example, when I was getting my undergrad, my choral director, Dr. Fuller, he's very, very, very well knowledgeable when it comes to choral directing and music history, choral performance, and all of these things. But like when it comes to like other things that's kind of outside of that scope, I wouldn't take his knowledge as being a doctor in music, and kind of like say that he can have the same knowledge to something that's out of that scope. So when it comes to Dr. Umar, like, I love his, activism that he's done in regards of like, Black awakening and just the Black experience. He is, a fan, African. And so with that being said, I do believe in strengthening the Black diaspora, but when it comes to other things that he talks about, some things I just wouldn't say he's an expert in. And so, just with that being said, there's that. And just I land there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Coco. Oh my God.
I just want to start off by saying I didn't know who this nigga D'Angelo was until today. I didn't know who his wife was.
Okay.
Look, anyways.
That goes on in our nation is not organic in nature. There are studies, multiple studies, that shows that foreign actors and their proxies are causing this kind of dissent to the advantage of those foreign actors. Iran being one of them, North Korea being one of them, and of course, public enemy number one when it comes to messing with the psyche of America is Russia. So a lot of the calculation to which you referred and to which Dominic referred about the inability of our nation to cohesively stand up to evil in the world, is how I'm going to put it. Evil in the world has to do with the manipulation of the public articulation of the issues by primarily the Kremlin. And it's not just with regard to Ukraine. If you go to the chat, and this is very fresh in my mind because I responded to somebody with regard to Israel because I posted, and I recommend, by the way, not that that's our topic, you scroll back and see this woman in London who gave this dissertation about all of these humanitarian crises around the world that are far worse than Gaza, not to minimize what's going on in Gaza, but far worse than Gaza, but nobody knows anything about it. Because there are no news articles about it, very few. One of the studies showed that in a certain period of time, there were 30, I got the figures right here actually, from October 7th, 2023 to April 8th, 2024, there were 32,000 articles about Gaza, 3,400 about Sudan. And if you think the people of Gaza are suffering a humanitarian crisis, it pales in comparison to what's been going on in Sudan. Why? Well, then you take a look at what's going on social media, and you see that on TikTok alone, the start of the war in Gaza, there have been literally billions of postings.
Trump is accomplishing.
Billions. Not 1 billion. Billions. So many that it's not even statistically wild to even mention how many postings there are about Sudan. Because they're virtually non-existent as compared to the postings about Gaza. And that's just TikTok. That's not all of social media, according to this study. So who's the perpetrator of all of these postings that have caused people to shut down school campuses and attack people and march in the streets, not just in the United States, but around the world? Russia. And all of that is documented, and I referred to that as well. Now, I wasn't talking about Ukraine, but it applies to Ukraine as well. So the reason we view the body politic as being pussified, to use a term that Dominic didn't use, but he might have, is because we are being manipulated by Russia and other foreign actors and their proxies. These are paid individuals. You could draw a line between the people who are out on the street, and you're going to find it in other issues as well, to Marxist organizations that are funded from China and Russia. All of this is documented. This is not Gary's opinion. There's documentation for all of this, and yet we get repeatedly fooled by all of this. And when I say we, I look in the mirror and I talk about, I could say, the news media. We give way too much credit to these noisy demonstrations thinking that they mean anything. They mean nothing. They really mean nothing. When you've got, I don't know, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't think there were that many, but I videotaped them. 300 people. I don't think there were 300, but I'll give them I'll be generous. Marching through Times Square, waving Palestinian flags and talking about genocide of Jewish people. And there are people there to enjoy Times Square, overwhelmingly more individuals, and they're not even paying attention to them. Except the tourists get all excited. Oh, here's a demonstration in the middle of 7th Avenue and on Broadway. So, for them it was like, oh yeah, this is cool. Let's send some video back to Aunt Martha in Tulsa. But the reality is, nobody gives a damn about their cause, whatever their cause may be. Really, I mean, not nobody, but in the aggregate, nobody. And so we give a lot of attention to a lot of concern about, oh my God, we can't get involved in another war, when nobody's talking about getting involved in another war. Why is that even part of the discourse? Nobody is talking about, if you're going to send Tomahawk weapons or any other kind of weapon to Ukraine or to Europe to help them defend themselves, we're not talking, at least not at this point, about getting involved in a war. And yet that's part of the equation when people are discussing all this stuff. Oh my God, he's going to get us into another war. Oh my God. Nobody's talking about that. I mean, they're talking about it, but it's not a fair assessment. They're talking about it because it's implanted in